Welcome to PR Talk, sponsored by the PRSA of Oregon and part of the MPN, the Marketing Podcast Network. This is your host, Amy Rosenberg, founder of Veracity and author of A Modern Guide to Public Relations. Help other people find our podcast by subscribing, rating, giving us a review, or sharing on social media. Hi, everyone. I have Anna Dearmon Kornick here. She's a time management coach. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Amy. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to talk with you. Not only are you the host of the It's About Time podcast and a time management coach, you also have a day job, which I want to talk to you about. And then you also were a former crisis communications pro. So could you just tell us all about your background and what you're up to now?
Sure. And I've got to say, I'm so excited for the opportunity to talk with you about the intersection of time management and public relations and communications, because it is a really important part of my story. And I can say that if it were not for my background, for better or for worse, in PR and communications, I would not be a time management coach today. But my story really starts in Washington, D.C., where I kicked off my career as a scheduler to a United States congressman. So picture 22-year-old, brand new, fresh out of college, young professional, click-clacking around in high heels and Navy Banana Republic business suits, just feeling really excited to be in the professional world. And as a congressional scheduler, my role was to manage every single minute of my boss's day, from the time he woke up until the time he called it a night. And interestingly enough, he slept on the couch in his congressional office instead of a hotel or an apartment. So it literally was every single minute of his day. And being brand new to the professional world, I was suddenly thrown into this environment where not only did I have to navigate my own time management, but I was tasked with managing what you could say is one of the most hectic schedules in the entire country. Every single day, I spent what felt like 10 to 12 hours in front of an Outlook calendar fielding requests from constituents in the district, or requests from lobbyists or special interest groups, not to mention things like dinner invitations and receptions and speaking requests, plus trying to fit in time to, vote and go to committee meetings, the whole reason why they're there in the first place. And as much as I loved that fast-paced introduction into the world of communications, I actually was also the press assistant in the office. So I got to do a little bit of both. I'm a Louisiana girl. So I'm born and raised in Louisiana. And one thing that Louisiana is known for is its food. And as much as I loved my time in DC, I could not get boiled crawfish or good shrimp Creole or jambalaya or gumbo, especially not like my grandmother makes it while I was in DC. So I moved back home, where I then kicked off a 10-year career in the 24/7 world of crisis communications and government affairs. Now, I don't have to tell your listeners what that life is like. And every day was some kind of crisis to be managed or order to be made out of chaos. And I loved it. You name it: oil spills, hurricanes, droughts, floods, earthquakes, plant explosions, nonprofit embezzlement schemes, universities on the brink of financial collapse, you name it. And I have probably escorted someone down a freight elevator and into a back alley in order to avoid TV cameras waiting outside.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And I loved it. But you could say that maybe I loved it a little too much. Because after so much time spent allowing clients and allowing client work and chaos to completely dictate every minute of my day, spoiler alert, I found myself in a pretty dark place of burnout. My boundaries were non-existent. My relationships were crumbling. My health was also not in a good place. I was getting sick so much more often because I was pushing myself to the brink. And I knew that after one too many mornings spent crying in the stairwell on the way up to my windowless office, that something had to change. Something had to change big time. And so I walked away. I was now the crisis that needed to be managed. And I didn't know what exactly life was going to look like for me next, but I had to believe that there was a way that I could combine that quirky time management experience I got so early on with my love for communicating. And I made it my mission to either help other professionals, especially women, work their way out of the dark place of burnout that I had experienced, or I wanted to help them avoid it altogether. And so after trial and error, I am now a time management coach and host of It's About Time, my podcast about work, life, and balance. And had it not been for my complete lack of boundaries as a communications professional, I would not be where I am today.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I love this so much here. So first of all, okay. Now what would you say to somebody who can't, so you probably did the right thing. I mean, you worked until you, I don't know if this is the right thing, but you worked until you just couldn't anymore. Right. And
Basically.
so leaving was probably the right thing, but sometimes we can't do that. And so what would you, looking back to yourself there crying in this stairwell, what would you have said to that girl that would have helped her a little bit at that time in terms of, not crisis, but time management?
Yeah. I really wish I had known that quitting and walking away, that wasn't the only option. That was just the only option that I saw. Now that I look back, I see that I didn't have systems or processes and workflows in place. I didn't have a consistent way of creating a realistic to-do list day by day. I wasn't time blocking. I didn't know what task batching was. I didn't have solid routines in place. I was allowing the crisis of the day to dictate how I spent my time. And so my advice to that Anna back then would have been to dive into just basic time management and organizational practices a whole lot sooner, because I could have saved myself so much heartbreak and so much stress had I known what I could have done differently.
Okay. But there's like two questions here, because number one, that kind of was your job, was to deal with the crisis. So how do you kind of balance that? Number one. Then number two, even if you aren't in a crisis PR job or even in PR at all, you could say that maybe there's other crises or people create crises for you that might not even be a crisis. And so when you're young and new in your career, in order to create boundaries, you have to kind of manage your manager, right? So how the heck can you do that? So that was two questions. So if that's hard to answer both, that we could start with one.
Yeah, no problem. The first thing that comes to mind is that it's nearly impossible to set boundaries for yourself unless you have clearly defined what is truly most important to you. Because when you know what your vision for the future is, and like, let's say you're a communications professional, whether you're in PR, whether you're in crisis or you're in a non-crisis form of PR, you have to know what exactly do you want in the future for your career? What do you want your life to look like? Because when you have that clear vision for the future, that's going to influence how you approach different opportunities in your work. That's going to approach how you choose to spend your time. When you're clear on your values, and your values are going to impact your professional life and your personal life, that makes it a lot easier to sort through the difference between real emergencies and created or just fake emergencies. So many times people will come to you and they'll try to put an emergency on your plate or put a crisis on your plate. And it is our instinct to jump in and want to help. But when you're clear on your values and your vision for the future, you actually have a lens to look through and ask yourself, okay, how important is this really? And how can I prioritize this compared to everything else that's happening in my work and in my life?
Mm-hmm. And so how do you do that, I guess? Like how did you because we'll get into kind of the tactics, which I love, like your work routines. I hadn't really heard of those startup and shutdown routines, but like how did you even learn that stuff then? Did you kind of had to teach it to yourself?
Yeah. Yes. So I love to read. I love to learn. Lifelong learning and curiosity is one of my personal core values. And so I wanted to figure out what could I do differently. And so I started reading every book that I could get my hands on about redefining your career and let's start with why. And I really started with trying to rediscover what my purpose was. And that took me down a path to understanding the importance of having a vision and having core values. So it was really a lot of reading. You can't go to college to get a degree in time management. There are now tons of courses and things like that available, but it was like my philosophy on time management and what I did to get myself out of that place of burnout to where I am now was the result of a patchwork of just different methods and philosophies until I found something that worked for me and now works for others.
Okay, so what works for you and others?
It's starting by clarifying your vision. And I know I've already mentioned vision and values, and I'll try not to be a broken record, but those are the two most underestimated foundations of time management. So often when someone says, okay, I want to get better at time management, help me out, they'll open up their calendar and they'll say, how can we fit all of this stuff in? How can I rearrange all of this stuff to make it work? But the thing is that if you're starting your time management on the pages of your calendar, you're already too late. You've missed that incredibly important foundational work of deciding what's most important to you. Because if you don't have that, you're just moving random stuff around on a page. You're not looking at things with the perspective of how does this help me achieve my goals? How does spending my time in this way get me closer to achieving my vision? Are my values reflected in the pages of my calendar? And it just makes making decisions about how to spend your time so much easier. And so anytime I start working with a new client, regardless of their industry, regardless of what their family life looks like, we always start with a vision because then they have a direction that they're heading in. I mean, Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind as one of his 7 habits of highly effective people. And that's what a vision is. It's beginning with the end in mind.
Okay. And also values. I could speak to values because I have kids, and I did say, my husband and I said that when we created our business, it was about the kids, honestly. Mm-hmm. And so if I ever kind of have to question, well, should I go to this meeting or take Audrey to a sports practice? Mm-hmm. I can feel okay declining the meeting and going to sports. And I just always have to tell myself that. I always have to remind myself because I am a doer. And also as a woman who is trained to be a giver, it's very hard for us, especially in PR, because we're in service oriented work. So anyway, okay. So you start with that. Now, last thing I'll say, I love the thing about moving things around on the page because it reminds me of cleaning a house in a way, or organizing a house. I was told when I was listening to this home organizer that you don't just like move stuff around, you have to get rid of it.
Yes.
In order to create space for the other stuff, or like not to have too much stuff. And I do notice, this is so random, when I try and put various clothes away and I get overwhelmed because there's no space, I think, oh, okay, I just need to clean out the closet, get rid of things. It's just I'm backlogged here. So how do you do that in your professional life?
Yeah. This is such a great question. And whenever I am working with someone or talking with someone who is just feeling completely overwhelmed in their professional life and they don't know what they can cut, we start talking about what's in their genius zone. We start
genius zone? Is that what you said?
Yes. Their genius zone. So we start talking about everything that they do. What are all of the different ways that they spend their time? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then we look at everything through the lens of how passionate are you about that task or that project, and how proficient are you at that task or that project. And so the things that are in your genius zone are the things on your plate, on your to-do list, in your job description that you are highly passionate about. So you love doing them, but you're also highly proficient. So you're very, very good at doing these things. And so what I love to do is, those giant wall Post-it notes that people use for trainings?
Mm-hmm.
I love to have my clients grab one of those giant Post-it notes and put a grid on this Post-it note and divide the page into 4 quadrants. So you've got one quadrant where you capture the things that you do that you are highly proficient at and highly passionate about, your genius zone. But then there are 3 other zones, and they are danger zones, because these are the activities that often take up our time, our energy, and our mental resources that could be going to our genius zone. And so those 3 zones are your disinterest zone. So those are the things that you are actually highly proficient at doing, but you are not passionate at all about doing them. So these are things that you are just completely bored doing, despite the fact that you're great at them. There's your drudgery zone, which these are the things on your list that you hate doing. So low passion, hate doing, and low proficiency. So you are not good at doing them. For me, it's anything taxes or expense related. I'm not good at it. Don't enjoy doing it. That's drudgery zone. And then there's the distraction zone. So these are the things in your work that you actually really enjoy doing, but you are not good at them. An example for me is tinkering with my website. I love to switch out colors and fonts and rearrange things, but I'm not very good at it. And someone else could actually add value to my website much more than I could. And then I wouldn't have to waste my time. And so by categorizing all of the different ways that someone is spending their time into one of these 4 zones, your genius zone, your distraction zone, your drudgery zone, or your disinterest zone, you're able to really clarify, okay, these are my sweet spot activities. And those other 3 zones, that's where you can begin to look for opportunities to cut, to eliminate, to automate, or to delegate. And just really taking them section by section and asking yourself, do I really need to be doing this? If not, let's eliminate it. Can this be made more efficient with a workflow or some type of automation using Zapier? Or can you create a template so that you're not recreating the wheel every time? And then finally, delegating. If you have a team, if you're able to delegate, if you're able to use your genius zone categories as an opportunity to talk with your supervisor. That was actually a major success story for one of my clients who recognized that all of this time that she was spending in her danger zones was taking away from her core responsibilities. So she very strategically approached her manager, and as a result, they created a brand new position at her organization so that she could focus on the core responsibilities of her job.
Oh, that's amazing. And that's very powerful too. So what do you do if I'm always one of those problem makers? I'm a rebel too. That's the whole thing. A Gretchen Rubin rebel. Okay.
I am a questioner that leans rebel. I want to know why, but I might just not do it anyway.
That's hilarious. So my husband's a questioner and he drives me crazy. Okay, now, so yeah, so rebels, by the way, and creative people. So if I'm a rebel, I'm going to time block. Well, okay, let me go back. So, there's that, but then the issue I have with this, the genius zones and the 4 things. Yeah. Well, what if I don't like doing something, but I need to do it? So, and I realize, we need to do taxes. That's what I'm talking about. Like, a lot of marketers or business owners don't want to do sales or marketing for their own company or their own selves because either they're embarrassed or whatever. In sales, there's a little bit of fear to that. It's kind of hard. So we, as PR firm people, we have a tendency to hide within the clients. Like it's easier. So, and that is a genius zone. And there's a passion there because we're client driven. That's why we keep our clients. But there's a tendency to hide within them. And some people really just like checklists and getting things done. So then you can just ignore what you need to do to accelerate your business. I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's when, instead of looking at the work through the genius zone lens, and this is what's so fun about all of the different time management strategies and philosophies that I've picked up along the way, is that there's a tool for just about everything. So when you think about something like sales in your business, doing business development, it's something that a lot of people find awkward. I totally get it. It can be uncomfortable. That without business development, there is no business, right? We can agree. Without business development, there is no business. You have to continue to put yourself out there and toot your own horn and, do all the awkward sales things in order to keep the business alive. That would be considered a boulder in your business. And when I say boulder, I like to think of priorities in terms of boulders, big rocks, and pebbles. So again, just like you can categorize nearly everything in your business into one of those zones of genius, you can also categorize everything into a level of priority based on whether it is a boulder, a big rock, or a pebble. Boulders are the things that are incredibly important, but they're not urgent, so they tend to fall on the back burner. For a lot of us, business development and engaging in sales is one of those boulder activities, because while it's important to keeping our business alive, it's not necessarily urgent until it is. And you don't want it to get to that point of, oh my gosh, I need business now. Big rocks, these are the things that are important and urgent. This is work. This is client work. This is project work. These are the things that are deadline based, that really move the needle for your projects and your clients. And then finally, pebbles. Pebbles are all of the little bitty things that take up little bits of our time here and there, and we can easily get distracted by them if we don't watch out. And when it comes to planning your week ahead or your month ahead, in order to truly make the most of your time and make sure that you are spending your time in ways that are going to move the business forward and move your projects forward, you've got to start by scheduling time for those boulder activities. Everybody's boulder activities are going to be different, but you start by carving out time for those sales calls or whatever business development activities it is. Maybe it's something that you do once a week is prospecting. Maybe once a month you aim to submit, a proposal, whatever. You block that time out first before you block your free spaces or your time blocks, your placeholders for your client work. That way it actually gets done and you're able to hold yourself more accountable because you already have the time blocked in your calendar.
Okay. So then the problem is if you are a rebel, and even if you haven't taken the Gretchen Rubin test, but you guys could just go online and look for the test, and it's super easy, not too long of a test. I think it's free. So even if you're not a rebel, but you're a creative, so rebels like to we like to schedule things for, like, say we're going to do something and then not do it because even for ourselves. So we don't even follow our own rules because it's
You can't tell
fun.
me what to do, self.
Well, it's fun too. So like it adds a little spiciness to the day. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, well, I might do that. I might not, because we don't want to be, boxed in, number one. But then there is that creative part where if you're in a flow. So flow work is really important to creativity, which I think you do talk about flow. So anyway, I don't know how to handle all those two issues.
Yeah. Well, one of the most important things to remember for rebels, and this is applicable to most people, but especially rebels, is that rebels need to make whatever they aspire to do a part of their identity before it actually is. And so if you were to tell yourself, I am someone who follows through on my time blocks. I am someone who does business development. I am someone who I am not a rebel myself. I lean rebel, but something about tying the action to your identity supposedly makes it just a little bit more compelling for rebels to follow through.
Thank you. Yes, I forgot about that. That's great.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So one thing I can do is I can do creative, I can do like content marketing because I am a writer, period.
Yes, I am a writer.
Yeah. But okay, so keep going. Then now I don't remember for creative flow. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one really important thing to remember about creative flow, and I have a full podcast episode on this. I'll have to send you the link so you can include it. But the thing about creative flow is that it takes time to get into. You can't just set aside 15 minutes and tell yourself, oh, I'm going to get into a flow state. You actually have to have really a minimum of 2 hours blocked out for yourself, because it can take around 23 to 29 minutes just to get into a state of deep concentration. And then you've got about 90 or so minutes that our brains are able to engage in full focus before we get fatigued and we start making mistakes. And so the ideal amount of time to set aside to get into that flow state is 2 hours. So first, that's really the first thing you've got to do to set yourself up for success, is to make sure you've got enough time to make it happen. The second thing is to know yourself and the type of environment you need. Maybe you need to listen to white noise. Maybe you need to listen to classical music. Begin to really pay attention when you find yourself in those moments of flow, and kind of take an assessment of, okay, what does my environment look like right now? And try and replicate that in the future. Because when you begin to realize that, like, okay, I can get in a flow state whenever I put on a brown noise YouTube video, then do that every time, it'll signal to your brain that this is flow time. So I would say those two things: making sure you've got enough time, and second, being aware of your environment so you can then replicate that environment in the future.
Okay. So is making sure you have enough time, is that task batching?
So it can be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So task batching, if you're listening and you're not familiar, is really just grouping similar tasks together into a larger time block. I like to think of it as squeezing a bunch of pebbles together and making a big rock. You can use task batching for things like, instead of, let's say, if you invoice or do activity reports for clients, that's something I remember doing as an account executive. Instead of doing one on Tuesday and one on Wednesday and one on Thursday, I would hold them all and do them all at once on Friday. So that was how I would task batch the administrative part of my job. That way you can kind of get into a groove. So I do remember doing that, at least. But getting into a flow state or having that 2 hours to work, you can use that to work on a single project. Let's say you're writing a speech for a client, or you are doing in-depth research. Having that 2 hours set aside doesn't always look like task batching, but it can.
Okay. So then all I can do right now is task batch. Like, in terms of it, I can do a flow. So what I'm doing is all of our social, like, right, like all of it right now. Yeah. I'm like, I want to get it all the copy done now. Until I get, distracted. And so it's like little chunks of time, but within one big project.
Yes.
But then, so the thing is, okay, so if I'm writing something big, like a blog post or article, I have realized I do need about 2 hours, because if I don't do that, it feels longer, because I'm a little obsessive. So if I start something, it drives me crazy when I can't finish it. So all I do is think about getting back to it, and then it irritates me and it feels longer. However, I was listening to your last podcast episode yesterday with the other PR person, which was really cool.
Tiffany. Yeah. Dr. Tiffany Urich. She's fantastic.
Yeah. So we'll link to that in the show notes so you guys can check it out. But she was talking about pocket time. And that's where I get really tripped up right now, because having kids that are involved in activities and all this, it's like, I only have 15 minutes. And she did say, well, just start the thing, start write one paragraph. And I totally agree with that. So I do that, but then it irritates me because I can't get back to it.
Yeah. And again, like, to me, that is the beauty of there being so many different types of strategies. I love the idea of working in the pocket time, but Amy, I just finished writing a book. I turned it in yesterday morning.
Good job.
Thank you. Went and bought myself a sheet cake to celebrate.
Oh, good. Yay.
And I tried working in the pocket time because my conversation with Tiffany was while I was in the middle of writing. And I thought, okay, let me try this pocket time thing. It does not work for me. I love that it works for her. So if you try a strategy like, oh, let me write a paragraph here in 15 minutes. No, I can't do it. Doesn't work for me. And if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. It doesn't mean that you're broken or that there's something wrong with you. It just means that there's another way that's going to work better for you. And so I had to make sure that I had 2 to 4 hour blocks set aside. And I found out that 4 was actually my sweet spot. If I could, which is nearly impossible to find when you have a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old like I do. So I had to get out of the house as much as possible. But using the Pomodoro method, 25 minutes of work, 5-minute break, repeated 4 times, and then taking a longer break, that was the best way for me to get the work done, take breaks to still feel fresh, and to make real progress. So that was huge for me.
Yeah. Okay. So then, yeah, I would think of pocket time as more, this is silly, but I call in my little to-do list, I have something on the side that says dumb stuff, like dumb stuff, like, yeah, which is Pebbles. Like just sign up the kid for this or easy stuff, right? But so for me, with having ADHD, easy things are actually not easy for me. They're harder in a way, like because I get very tripped up on tech and all this. So anyway, but you could do one dumb thing in 15 minutes.
100%.
Yeah.
So Pebbles, your dumb things, are what I like to call pebbles. And they fit in the spaces between everything else. So if you've got that pocket time, that's perfect to sign your kid up for a dance, or that's perfect to put in an Amazon order for toilet paper or whatever, you got a minute, go to your minute list, go to your pebble list, pull a pebble and get it done.
Okay. So then why don't you talk to us? And I know I could just talk to you all day. So let me just kind of list out some of the things that maybe we could touch on. And then I also want to talk about any tools, like tech tools you might recommend, but we've got the startup, shutdown routines, and theme days we haven't really talked about.
Yeah. Yes. So, I mentioned that I wish I had known more about time management, priorities, and living based on my vision and values when I was a PR professional. But there were a few things that I was actually getting right. And those were using a startup routine and a shutdown routine at the beginning and end of each of my work days and theme days. So let me tell you about a startup routine and a shutdown routine. And since you mentioned that you hate when things are left undone, you're especially going to love the shutdown routine. But to start from the top, a startup routine is a quick routine that you perform every single day at the beginning of your workday to transition from not work brain to work brain. And this is especially helpful if you work from home because there's not a huge environment change because our environment signals so much. You walk into your office, you sit down at your desk, it's time to focus. But when you're working from home and you don't have that commute to rev up for the day, you need to create one for yourself. So a startup routine is really just a short routine, no more than like 5 to 7 things, maybe even less, that they are physical things that create a specific mindset. And so it could look like something as simple as 1, sit down at your desk. 2, open up your laptop. 3, open up your email. 4, open up your task management system. 5, go refill your water. 6, sit back down, get to work. And going in the same order every time signals to your brain, all right, it's go time. Let's do this. Then at the end of your day, you perform a shutdown routine. So a shutdown routine is incredibly important because we can't finish every single project by the end of the day. We have multiple clients, we have ongoing projects, and you can't officially tie everything up with a bow so you can head home and be present with your family. There's actually something called the Kornick effect, and it's this sensation, this thing that happens in our brains where we constantly mull over open-ended things or loose ends or open projects. We're constantly ruminating about things that are unfinished. When you have a shutdown routine, you're able to trick your brain in a way into thinking that you've finished. Because let's say your shutdown routine involves reviewing all the status of your current projects, and it includes looking at your day tomorrow and maybe mapping out your time blocks or just making a quick to-do list. It's telling yourself, I am done for the day. I have reached a stopping point, closing your laptop, and then boom, you're done. And this creates it's a physical routine that creates a mental mindset shift to tell yourself, I am done for the day. And the more you do this, the more you're able to reinforce with yourself that you are stopped, you are done, you're able to turn off for the most part until the next morning so you can be more present with your friends and family in the evenings. Mr. Rogers was a big fan of the shutdown routine. Do you remember whenever he would walk into his house, he would take off his outside jacket and put on his cardigan, and he would take off his outside shoes and put on his inside shoes? That was his physical routine that put him in the mental mindset of being at home.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so talk to us about theme days, or and maybe you could do theme weeks or even theme months. I don't know.
You could. And I have done all of those, and I have seen great success in lots of different forms. To zoom out and start with theme months, you think about in January when we start the year and we have all of these big hopes and dreams for the year ahead and all of these goals and resolutions. And then we start on all of them in January and then get completely overwhelmed by January 17th. And then we give up. Using theme months, on the other hand, enables you to space out your big plans for the year. My biggest example is that I'm sure we all have camera rolls on our phones that are bursting at the seams with thousands of pictures that we need to do something with. And one year I designated August as photo month. And I told myself, this is the year that you are going to get these photos under control, figure out a system, and start actually printing photos. And August was my month. And so I felt zero guilt from January until July, making no progress on this. Zero guilt, because I had assigned August. I did the same thing one year, and I made April Professional Development Month. That was the month that I did research about PRSA and the Public Relations Association of Louisiana and all of the different organizations that were available for me to join. But I felt no guilt about it in January, February, or March, because April was the month to focus on that.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. Now, zooming into theme days, I'll skip theme weeks, but zooming into theme days are so great because they're like taking the concept of task batching, grouping similar tasks together into a specific, time block and doing them all at once, and applying them to your day. I love a good theme party. So theme days really, they end up creating consistency for you. So this is how they worked for me in a past communications role. Part of my responsibilities included creating social media content and updating the website and sending PR pitches. And so every Monday was Social Media Monday. And that was the day of the week that one of my clients was a museum. So I would walk the museum and take pictures of new artwork and catch behind the scenes of the curators at work. And so I would get all of that content, and then I would write the captions, and then I would get everything scheduled. And my coworkers knew that Monday was my Social Media Monday. So if there was anything that they wanted included, they would need to make sure I had it on that Monday. So it set a rhythm for me, and it set an expectation for them. Tuesday was Tell 'em Tuesday. Tell them about it Tuesday. And that's when I would put together pitches. That's when I would reach out to media contacts. And that's when I would tell stories and focus on like true PR media relations that day. Wednesday was Website Wednesday. And that was the day that I made updates to the website. Blog posts were published, event listings were published. And again, it set a rhythm and it set an expectation with my coworkers that if you need something updated, you need to let me know. You need to submit it to me by Tuesday, end of day. Now, on these theme days, was the website the only thing that I did? No, I did other types of work, but no matter what, every single Wednesday, there was time set aside for the website. And so I would encourage you, if you're listening, think through what are those things that you do on a regular basis? Can you assign them a day of the week so that you create consistency for yourself? You may be able to do this with certain projects or certain clients or certain types of work. One of my clients had great success using projects. Every Monday was project A, Tuesday was project B, Wednesday was project B, and then Thursday was like, I've lost track of the days now. But anyway, she had a specific project for each day, and it kept her making progress forward without spending too much time in 1 week on a single project and getting behind on the other two. You can do the same thing with clients if that works for you as well. Maybe Tuesday is the day that you focus on your healthcare related clients. Wednesday is the day that you focus on your tourism clients. And it creates a rhythm and a routine. And plus it's fun.
So really random, but do you, as a PR person, when you were in PR, do you remember what your Thursday and Fridays were?
I'm trying to think. Website Wednesday was always easy to remember because of the alliteration. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday, we had an event every single Thursday. And so it was typically a lot of event prep. And then Friday was finance and admin Friday. And so if I needed to do activity reports or submit reimbursements from whatever, or fill out, forms, I tried to hold as much finance and admin kind of stuff until Friday morning. Yeah.
Dumb stuff. That's what I would call it.
Yes. Little dumb stuff.
Well, and it's Friday. So, okay. So now let's see. So, tools, especially if you are in PR, what tools would you recommend?
If your team, agency, organization is not using some type of a project management system to manage client work and assignments, get one ASAP. The very first agency that I worked for operated out of a Google sheet.
And so why didn't that work? We might need a little convincing here. We think we have it down. We've looked at a lot of tools and tried them. And, as I said, I'm not very good at tech. So it takes a while and then I just give up. Right. So why didn't it work?
Here's the thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But there are so many platforms and programs now that can make communication so much more streamlined, besides operating from a Google sheet as your status doc. And then as a result of everything, if the status doc is a Google sheet, that means that all the communication is very likely going to take place over email or Slack, which then results in an overwhelming amount of information that needs to be processed on a daily basis. One of the toughest things about being a member of the crisis team at an agency where not everyone was on the crisis team, but there were times that we had to pull in people from other divisions to step in crisis situations. And the only method that we had for communication was email. And if I needed something urgently, I would send an email. But if this person was not used to having their email up all the time because they weren't a crisis person, then it would cause a delay. And with something like Asana or Trello or Monday.com, I think is another one. With something like a project management tool, you're able to contain your communication about clients, about specific projects, about specific tactics within projects to the system. So it's almost like the communication lives right where the information is, instead of having some stuff in a Google Doc and the rest of it living in a jumble inside your email. It cuts down on so much back and forth, and it just makes communication so much easier. And when you have a task management system like Asana, like Trello, everyone has a source of truth. They have a place to reference, to know very quickly what's the latest status, what is assigned to which person, what is the deadline. And yes, you can do all of that with a Google Doc or a Google Sheet, but that's not what it's made for. Like that's not what Google Sheets or Google Docs were made for. These programs are made for collaboration. So I'd say that there are typically 4 different types of tools that I recommend that everyone has, collaboration being one of them. The other 3 are a capture tool, a calendar tool, and a client management tool. But talking specifically about a calendar tool, we all have calendars, right? We all have some type of calendar. I'm a huge advocate of having a digital calendar over simply just operating from a paper planner. I've worked with clients before who were purely operating out of a paper planner, and then they would wonder why they were showing up late to meetings because things were changing on a digital calendar that weren't being updated in a paper planner. So having some type of digital calendar. I'm a huge fan of Google Calendar, but I know that typically it just depends on what your organization uses. A capture tool is the place where your ideas go. And it's one of the things that makes us feel so scatterbrained and frazzled all the time is when we have ideas and things to do spread out across 37 Post-it notes, 3 journals. Some of it's in a Google Doc, half of it is in our phone notes, and some of it's in the screenshots in our camera roll. And so we think that whenever we have an idea or something to do, like as long as we put it down somewhere, then we'll be fine. But then what happens is our brain starts going into overdrive, trying to remember, where did we put that blue Post-it note that we had in our hand last Thursday? I mean, it makes us crazy. Mm-hmm. And so choose either 1 to 2 capture tools to put your stuff in every time. I recommend having a digital one and an analog one because you may not always have access to a digital one. Digital one, again, something like Asana or Trello can serve as a capture tool because you can use that to capture ideas and to-dos as well. But even something like Evernote or even a Google Doc can be used as a capture tool as long as you use it consistently every time. Mm-hmm. And then having 1 analog option. Don't have 37 notebooks that you're trying to have every single notebook has a different purpose. Like that's insane because then you would end up like, what if you need to access all of these notebooks in the same day? Are you carrying around a tote bag with 37 notebooks in it? Mm-hmm. That doesn't make sense. Pick one and stick with it. Pick one and stick with it. Being consistent is going to relieve a ton of stress on your brain from having to remember where you put things. So calendar tool, have a capture tool, have a collaboration tool. Again, that can be Asana, Trello, Slack is also fantastic for collaboration, especially because they can be integrated with so many other tools. And then the last tool that I recommend is just a client management tool. And everybody's going to have like either an invoicing service, and that's typically at the company level. But if you're a freelancer listening in and you are doing your own invoicing, having some type of automated client management tool, I use Dubsado. There are a lot of great options out there, but I'm able to store my contracts, my email templates, my activity report templates, all of it in one place. So I'm not creating Word doc invoices and saving them as PDFs and emailing them. And, it's just a lot easier and it's time saving and streamlined to use a system.
So because you can't use a regular project management software for that because you can't bill through that. Is that kind of...
In mine, you can't bill through it. I know that there are so many different forms of systems that allow you to do the task management and the billing. The ones that I've used aren't enabled for that, but I've got to imagine they exist. What's
the one that you use for client management?
So I use a program called Dubsado for client management. It's really built it's built and primarily marketed to creative entrepreneurs, people who are doing freelance social media management, or a lot of coaches use it. A lot of people in the wedding and events industry use it as well, but it's fantastic.
Okay. Yeah. And then just so everyone knows, we use Toggle for time
Yes.
time tracking. And then you can do reports in there. You can see what your team is doing so that you can look at how many hours are spent per month, per week, and so forth. But I don't know if you can bill through that, but you can get the hours in order to bill. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's really cool. I'm a fan of Toggle as well. For automation, I just want to throw out two options. One is called ifttt.com, and it means if this, then that. And basically, you're able to connect different tools that don't normally talk to each other. So, for example, let's say that one of my IFTTTs is for the weather. It's kind of silly, but whenever the weather forecast in my area predicts thunderstorms, I automatically get a calendar appointment on my calendar that says thunderstorms that day. So I can know just by looking on my calendar that there's thunderstorms. And that's a really small thing that I can automate that. I mean, does it save me tons of time? No, but it's super convenient and I like it. And then the other one is called Zapier, or maybe it's Zapier. I am not sure. But you can, again, connect different programs where, let's say that someone enters a new line or inputs something into a certain cell in a Google sheet, it can then automatically send a Slack message or something like that, letting you know about it. So it's really great for creating things like automated reports. Anytime someone schedules a podcast interview for my show, It's About Time, the moment they use my automated scheduling tool called Acuity Scheduling, it sends an email to me and it sends a Slack message to my podcast producer, letting them know that there is a new episode that needs to be prepared. And it's just really cool because it cuts down on a lot of that email communication that really tends to bog us down.
Yeah. Okay. So last question I have is, if you had, maybe it's a two-part question. If you, let's say you're in PR, but not too crisisy, but like you're, kind of getting the groove on with that. There's a little crises here and there. What is one, if you could pick one tool that you would have, what would that tool be? And then if you could pick one strategy that you could have in terms of like time blocking, this and that, which tool or which strategy would it be?
Ooh, okay. So if I'm working in PR and I get to pick one tool, that tool would be Clockwise. That tool would be Clockwise. So if you are a Google Calendar user, you can download an extension called Clockwise for free. And what Clockwise does is it takes your preferences, how long you want to take a lunch break each day. What hours do you want to take a lunch break during? Then it will analyze your calendar and find the optimal times for you to have 2 hours of uninterrupted focus time during your week, so that you can create that space to get into a flow state, so that you can have time set aside to actually eat lunch. And it's able to create these spaces for focus around the meetings on your calendar, and it helps you protect that time. The cool thing about PR pros is that we interact with others, and we have to have that time set aside for true creative focus work. And a week filled with meetings is going to look like you bringing your true focus work home to get it done. That was my life when I was in PR. Too many meetings, and I would stay up so late at night getting my work done. But when you have Clockwise, you're able to protect your focus time so that you can actually get the work done during the day. So that would be my one tool.
Okay.
And then
the strategies, like what kind of strategy? I mean, I don't know if it kind of Clockwise might answer that, because it sounds like it's time blocking is the strategy.
It is. And so the strategy would be time blocking. Your to-do list without time blocking is just a wish list. Your to-do list without time blocking is just a wish list, because until you actually take the things that are on your to-do list and create time blocks that represent the time you'll spend doing those tasks, you're just kind of hoping for the best, and you're hoping that you guess and spend the right amount of time on each one, or that you've put the right amount of things on your list. If you want to end your day actually feeling accomplished and like you've reached the end of your list, put less things on your list each day. Maybe that's going to take being a little bit more realistic about what you're capable of and what timelines can realistically look like, so that you're not working until 2 a.m. to meet deadlines. But time blocking really is the basic. That's the secret. That's the key. If you can time block your to-do list, you'll actually get things done.
Mm-hmm. Yay. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This was so helpful. And last thing I'll say is my theme month this month for September is organization.
Ooh.
So because it feels like back to school, back to reality is a good time to just get organized.
Definitely. It is. Perfect time of year.
Well, thank you for helping us get organized.
Of course. I'm so glad to be here. Really appreciate you inviting me to spend time with you. This has been a delight, and I've loved talking about time management at the intersection of PR and communications.
Yay. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. For more PR insight, be sure to check out Amy's book, A Modern Guide to Public Relations, at prtalk.co. Also, please subscribe, rate, or leave us a review.